Well, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Liza, and we're back here on Pens and Poison today with BJ Harrison. BJ is the host of the hot podcast, Classic Tales. The show peaked as the #3 podcast in iTunes. Pretty soon, Audible came calling to talk about a new program called ACX. Now, over 800 audiobooks later, he continues to impress critics and listeners alike. Audiofile says he narrates with gusto and enthusiasm. Time opts for soothing. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about audiobooks, what BJ thinks of them, how he records, and everything else in between. BJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, BJ, I'd love to start off here a little bit about your journey with audiobooks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into audiobooks, what got you started, and where you're at right now with your journey?
I actually had a hard time reading when I was a kid. I was one of those. And so I struggled through school. I didn't do too well. I did okay. You find tricks to get around. But later in my 20s, I fell into a career as a scenic artist and sculptor for television and film. And I discovered audiobooks. And a whole world opened up to me because all of these amazing stories, all of these classics that I have that elevated language that I couldn't quite get into and everything. I had an actor like interpreting it for me and helping me out. And so that was a huge help. And it changed my life. It changed everything. So then while I was working every day for 8-10 hours a day, I'd listen to audiobooks while I was painting walls or sculpting scenery or doing whatever it was. And so that's when I learned what makes a good audiobook. Kind of tuned my ear in there. Later on in 2007, a friend, my best friend said, "Have you heard about podcasting?" I'm like, this is 2007. There's no smartphones. There's like iPods. I don't even have a computer. I don't know what a podcast is. I don't have the internet in my house. Where'd that push it, I started a podcast. He was a runner. He started a triathlon podcast and it blew up. I'm like, that's awesome. And he goes, you should do it. Audiobook. He knew I had an acting background and everything in high school. Did plays together. So he's like, dude, you should do it. So I'm like, well, show me how. So I borrowed a computer and I borrowed I didn't even have the internet. So I used it at the shop I was working at the time to upload my podcast. And I started 3 episodes of my podcast and somebody at iTunes liked it and picked it up and featured it on their page. And it kind of took off. We were transitioning from MP3 players and MP3 CDs and stuff like that to smartphones. And it was right at that same time that Audible was taking off and they were starting to look at people who had home studios. So I just kind of fit that bill really well. And so this ACX program, they're like, here's where you can get work. If you want to be an audiobook narrator, here's where you can get work. You can audition for projects. You can start doing them. And so that's what I did for independent authors for like 7 years. And then about 10 years ago, I made the jump and did it full time. And now I work for publishers mostly is what I do. Now I work for Tentor. Whoever else wants to hire me, basically stuff for independent people. But I have my home studio, which has evolved into what it is over the years. And now when HarperCollins called and says, we'd like you to audition for something, I can. And not sound like I don't want to.
Sure. Okay, fantastic. So you've been narrating audiobooks for quite a while now. What is that process like? How do you go about it? How did you, make the leap from acting to audiobooks? Well, maybe start with the first part of it. Well, what's it like to narrate audiobooks?
Best thing in the world. It's quite simply the best thing in the world. It's my favorite thing. When I was listening to them, when I would, roll it, painting walls or whatever, I was like, there's a person out there who gets to play all the characters and do all the accents, and he gets to do this. It's like his job. Like, that's the coolest thing ever. They get to do like 10 of them. It blew my mind. And it's true. It is the best job. I mean, it's hard as a performer because you have to constantly perform every day. If you're feeling good, if you're feeling bad, if you're tired, if you're whatever. There's those challenges that come into it, but it's the best thing in the world. I can't make up a job that I would enjoy more. Figuring out how to do accents better or how to do the actual studio setup better or do the pacing. And, we're constantly taking coaching and learning and adapting and adjusting to everything. It's just, I'm just having a ball.
Fantastic. So how did we get from, second part of my question here, how did we get from kind of the, you said you did acting in high school. How did you get from that to narrating audiobooks?
Well, basically, it came out sideways. Like when I was with shops and stuff like that, and I would work with the Russians, I would speak in a Russian accent and stuff like that. And when I would work with other people, I'd just kind of joke around with them and stuff like that. And it was kind of coming out sideways. Right. So yeah, I just felt a pull, but I just tried doing podcasting and it just stuck. I just kind of followed where the universe was pulling me and wound up here.
Fantastic. Do you have a favorite audiobook that you've narrated? I looked you up on Audible and there were quite a few. Do you have a favorite one that you remember just was an absolute thrill for you to do?
Well, my favorite book is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens.
Oh, fantastic.
For a while, I would read that one every year because it always has there's just so much there.
Okay. Haven't heard of that one. Definitely will look into it. So, when we were looking for podcast guests, I had specifically asked Emily to see if we could get someone who does audiobooks on the show. So, I run Pens and Poison, and we always have this big ongoing debate in terms of does reading audiobooks qualify as kind of writing the book? I'm in the camp that absolutely, yes, it does. I think that literature fundamentally began as an oral tradition, right? The ancient Greeks were always reciting the Iliad, the Odyssey, and that's how the written tradition was established and heard out loud. So what do you say to people who say that, audiobooks doesn't count as reading?
First of all, it does. It just does. I mean, I struggled with reading, but audiobooks, I actually get more information when I listen than when I just look at decode the words. There's also been a ton of research and reports. There's a Time article about it and everything. Are audiobooks as good for you as everything else?
I actually had a really interesting experience with audiobooks. I've never been tested for ADHD, but I think I'm very fidgety and my brain is all over the place. So probably have some variation of ADHD. When I was a kid, part of my issue with reading was that I read a lot, obviously, but I like to read in small bursts. So I'll read for 20 minutes and then I'll go do something else and then I'll come back and read for another 20 minutes. I have trouble really sitting there for hours and hours and hours engrossed in a book. And I actually discovered audiobooks when I was trying to read in Russian. So my native language was Russian. I actually turned to audiobooks when I started getting into Russian literature because I realized that it would take me 6 months to get through like a Dostoevsky or a Tolstoy. So I actually got into audiobooks that way from Russian. It started to be a way that I was able to finish a lot of books in English that were a little bit slower for me. So for instance, I run a little online book club on YouTube every month, and we just read The Adventures of Augie March. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a really great, fantastic book, but not a lot happens throughout the book. The reader of that audiobook just really made the book come alive for me. I didn't really enjoy it when I was reading it on the page, but just the different interpretations. Sal Bello has these very Dickensian adjacent characters. I would say just very flowery descriptions of. I had a lot of pleasure listening to the second half of the book versus reading that first half, because when I heard it out loud, that is really when I fell in love with that book. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges of narrating audiobooks?
Oh, some of the biggest challenges are, for me, research. Because, well, if you run into, if you're doing something that's very research heavy, I usually hire it out, or, I have to make a big list of all the terms that I don't know, because you can't guess. You have to, if there's any word in the text that you don't know, you need to look it up. If you're doing a romance, you don't run into that a lot, or a lot of the self-help books are written so that they're very conversational. But if it's something that's a nonfiction that's research heavy, that's probably the trickiest thing. And also making sure that your accents and your character voices are tight. They don't sound too cartoony. They don't sound over the top. They sound believable. They don't pull the listener out like, whoa, when did Gomer Pyle show up? What's going on?
I really like what you said about the kind of research, because that's maybe something that we don't think about as readers, that you really do need to understand every single kind of component of what you're reading, especially in the nonfiction. Do you have any particular nonfiction books that you've narrated that you could use it as an example?
Oh, geez. There was one that was just, I think it took a year off my life. And because I wasn't prepared for it was the thing.
Sure.
Because I did a quick scan and I got some of them, and I thought the rest of them, I was like, I'll just do it on the fly. It was a book about the wars that happened from the time after World War II to the time of Vietnam. So it was a part of the world I'm not familiar with.
And so you definitely do a variety of books here. I'm just looking, you have The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is one of my favorite poems. And then you have The Vampires, Valentine, Surprise. How do you choose which audiobooks to narrate?
I'm a little weird because I do a lot of the classics. I have my podcast, and on top of that podcast, I also will do regular public domain titles, just as
Sure.
much as I can do, because that's my love. But my bread and butter, stuff that actually pays the bills, is the stuff that people hire me for, whether it's a studio or an independent author. So if you're looking at my Audible, then you'll see a whole bunch of classics and Count of Monte Cristo and all that kind of stuff. Then you'll see The Vampire's Mail Order Bride, or there's a whole bunch of anime stuff that's isekai role, books and stuff like that I've been hired to do. It's just like, so that side of it is like, well, whatever the market says, BJ is a good fit for this. Yeah, as long as it's not, too upsetting or too,
Sure.
there will have our lines that we don't want to cross. As long as I approve the script, it's okay.
So do you read I'm assuming you read the book before starting to narrate it? Yeah.
Yeah, do that. Like because there's the research element, but then there's also, you need to make sure that the characters sound right and everything like that. It's tricky when you do like romance, or like I have the Nocturne Fall series that I do, where it's a whole bunch of different paranormal creatures in one town. One book will be all about vampires, which have British accents. One will be a leprechaun. And so they'll have all sorts of Irish accents. In the next book, I'll have to create a whole other cast of characters. Sometimes you don't know when you start out that, like, let's just do this fun little voice for oh, by the way, now you have a whole cast of Cubans that you need to make sure don't sound ridiculous, so you just need to
Absolutely.
be prepared for what gets thrown at you.
Walk us through the process. So from start to finish, when you first are, maybe hired to record a particular audiobook to the final product that you turn in, what does that process look like?
Oh, geez. Are you ready? Okay. Well, first of all, they'll reach out and say, hey, we have a potential book. Do you want to audition? So I'll have to do an audition. It'll be 2-3 minutes of part. Usually they give me the part that they want to hear. There's a whole thing about auditioning that I could go into. It's the craft of getting the job based on your audition. So I audition. Hopefully I get the job. They usually will give 2 or 3 narrators options to audition. And then the rights holder will say, I want this guy. So they'll get the job, negotiate a rate, say, okay, great. They will give me a recording window and say, okay, we need you recorded from here to here. And then also we'll get you the final text, like the final script at this time. Some publishers will also give a list of like, here's all the characters, here's all of the terms, here's all of the things that we just preemptively picked out. Usually they won't. It's really nice when they do. Usually that's what I have to do though.
Sure.
And I will go through and I will pick out all the characters and I will make sure that I understand what's going on. And if anything doesn't make sense, like if I audition for a vampire book like I did, and I gave him like a Hungarian accent, but then as I read the book, they say that he talks like he's an old-timey guy from Downton Abbey. Well, he's probably British. So, we work out the kinks like that. So I give them we answer all of the questions. We make sure that we're all on the same page. Sometimes they have me record like a sample chapter so they can make sure that my studio sounds right. It's up to specs and everything like that. And also like my pacing, and just, they like what I'm doing, from slow, whatever. Then they'll give me the green light. I'll record the book, send it off to them. They'll have their team people go through and proof it against text. Then I'll get a report back that says, here's all the places you messed up. Hopefully it's not too many, because if it's too many, they won't hire me again. Then we go through and they'll give me usually like a little snippet of the MP3 right before, I'll hear the mistake. And then I can record that whole sentence again so that it matches up with what I originally did. Then their team will go ahead and correct all those mistakes and then send it off to retail, and then they pay me.
Sure. Okay. Wow. So quite an involved process. But that was the last version. Okay.
So
Right. I mean, I'm sure, so much work goes into it. On average, how long does the whole process take for one particular audiobook from?
start to finish. Again, well, they refer to them as snowflakes. Some of them are longer than others, some take. And it depends on the publisher, and it depends on the timeline. Like Milan, they don't even hire for books that are like 6 months out. But an independent author will say, I just had this great idea. I'm going to write this book. It's going to be awesome. Like a month later, we'll crank this thing out and go, when's the quickest you can get it to me? And again, I don't break the rules, but I'm outside of the norm. Most people don't do it my way. Just done it so long, I can do it really quickly. So sometimes I can turn a book around in maybe 2 weeks if I need to. An 8 to 12 hour book I can do inside of a week.
Sure.
records or whatever, but I mean, usually I record about 2 finished hours a day. So in a week, I try and do 10 hours a week, but that doesn't include the prep time or the post-production.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are either writers or maybe have a work in progress. So what is the process if you're a writer getting your book into the audiobook format?
Right. Well, if you're a writer, if you've published already on Amazon, if you already have your book on Amazon, if you got a backlog on Amazon, you can go there, claim your audio, go to acx.com, and then find your book on Amazon and claim it as yours. And then you can create a project on the Audiobook Creation Exchange, ACX. And then you can put your budget in, put your timeline in, put your artwork in, and then start soliciting auditions from audiobook narrators like me.
Oh, okay. I need to do this. I just have poetry books so far, but maybe I'll get a little narrator for my poetry.
And again, we could go on for hours about ACX, but that's basically how it works.
Okay.
Find a narrator, they give you the audiobook, that goes on Audible and Apple and their distribution network. So
I'm writing this down, acx.com. Okay. I'm going to get on it. I'm sure once again, a lot of our listeners have their own works as well. So you do audiobook narration full time, is that right?
Yeah.
So what is that lifestyle like? I'm sure it's very freelancey. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, it's great. I have a studio in my house, in my home. I just converted a basement. My construction background, I DIY'd it. It must help. And so basically I just wake up, I try and do 1 hour of, I call it long-term stuff, where I like just try and massage my website and look at, I have a list of stuff that's like just to keep a tight ship running, on my end. And then I do 1 hour of marketing where I try and reach out to new clients. And then after that, I do 1 recording session, get a finished hour done, go have lunch, and then I can go to lunch with my wife. My time is my own. It's just super flexible. So as long as I get my 2 finished hours in a day, I know that at the end of the week and the year, that's enough.
What would your advice be to people who are looking to have a kind of freelance creative profession?
I've always been a freelance. Even when I was doing scenery, that's a freelance profession. And so that's all I've known. So I've been able to do it for 28 years now.
Oh.
And it's challenging, but oh my gosh, it's freedom. It's free. You're your own boss. Nobody owns all of the stuff that I make. I own, where I've negotiated to sell. I'm in charge. I don't have to get permission to go see my kids when they perform in schools or, It's really challenging. It's hard, but it's worked for me. It's terrifying for a lot of people. It is possible. I do it. I've been able to raise a family on it. There's 5 of us here, so it can happen. It's way hard. It's really difficult, but it is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, if I may have a caveat though, you really need a partner who will be okay with that. Supportive. So I have a lot of friends who are artists and who are animators or whatever they are. They're amazing people. And you are a freelancer. It's a stress on partnership, whatever it is. So just want to put that in there.
Sure. Okay.
Lucky enough to have somebody who was also a freelancer. So she's like, dude, you got to do this. This is awesome. If we're in this together, we can do it. And
fantastic. Yeah, well, it's amazing to hear that your family is so supportive. I run actually 2 kind of businesses. Obviously, I have Pens of Poison. Here, I also run a little college consulting essay editing business. That's kind of my day job. I graduated from grad school, wanted to do something in the English writing field, had a little bit of difficulty figuring out where that would be possible. I was not all about the starving artist lifestyle. So, worked a couple of different firms. I actually did copywriting for a little bit before realizing that the advertising world was absolutely not for me. And then sort of transitioned from there to actually work full-time at a little college consulting firm and helped a lot of students with kind of college essays, that sort of thing. Really did not like working for someone else. I'm very self-driven. I like to do things my own way. I like to very organized, like to envision everything. So with that job, started my own little college consulting firm. And then, once that was more or less stable, then really moved into my passion, which is literature and writing. So I started Pens and Poison really only about 6 months ago now. So we accomplished crazy amount over the past 6 months, and it's really grown. We've got so much support, just blew up on Instagram and YouTube. So I definitely do recommend it. I think it's, as you've said, freedom, I think, is the number one thing. If I, need to take, if I need to take a flight somewhere, if I need to go somewhere, I'm free to do that. I don't have to get permission from a boss or anything like that. If I need to take some time off just for myself, I'm free to do that as well. So I love it. Just setting my own hours. Obviously, it's very busy and there are pros and cons, but I do think that the creative freelance lifestyle is the thing that more people should try out. And I think that it really just helps with finding yourself, finding your own voice. And as I've said, being free from everything. There's definitely a balance to strike in terms of making a living for yourself and also staying true to your own creative passions. But I think that if you do find the right balance, it is absolutely rewarding.
And I love that. I should have recommended that. Exactly what you're doing is like having several different avenues of income streaming, where you have, I have my podcast and I have my audiobook business and I also do whatever. So when one thing goes down, if I have a gap in my schedule, I go, well, I just finished Treasure of the Sierra Madre because I had an open week.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast.
Oh, I love the podcast. It's so fun. I mentioned my background. It's like, I just wanted to make something where if somebody wanted to discover the classics, they didn't know anything about them, but they wanted to, kind of like where I was. Where do I start? It's so intimidating. What do I do? Just subscribe. We just finished Journey to the Center of the Earth. You just listen every week. You get like an hour of free audiobook and you get to just get smarter. You can discover new authors. You can discover new genres you may not have listened to, but, find out there's actually something worthwhile in there. When I did Pride and Prejudice years ago, I had somebody write to me and say, dude, I never would have, it's like a guy, and he's like, I never would have picked up this book. I never would have done it. I love it. It's like, I love this book. So it was really cool. When I get stuff like that, little kids who are like going to their Taekwondo lesson with their moms, and their moms listening to Arthur Conan Doyle's mystery, whatever, and they get up there and they're like, okay, off you go. It's like, well, I'm going to miss the island. Go, yeah. And, so even like little kids can get into it and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the classics are just a treasure trove of adventure and fun. Yeah. I love being able to form them, unabridged as they originally were written and, to a modern audience and still have everybody go, this is so fun. It's so cool.
Yeah. So how did you get into the classics? You mentioned that you weren't much of a reader when you were a kid. What facilitated that transition?
I was always pulled and drawn toward them and as a kid, but then I would try to read them and I just couldn't. And so I don't know. I don't have a really good answer other than I was just pulled toward them and always attracted to them. I tried to read like Frankenstein in 8th grade. It's way too hard for me.
Yes.
Stuff like that. So I just but I don't know what the draw is. It's just like the genre that I was always interested in. It's like there was this fascination that there was something magical that was there that I wasn't getting.
I love that. Do you have an early classic that you remember reading and absolutely loving, other than David Copperfield?
Well, when I first got into audiobooks and started this journey, I really got into Robert Louis Stevenson. And I really liked, because it was easy to, it was a good gateway drug. And so when I first read Treasure Island in my 20s for the first time, that was like, oh my gosh, this is before the Pirates movies and everything like that. There was just like that dearth of pirate stuff. It was like, pirates are so cool. Nobody's talking about them. How come? These are so cool. Then when I read Treasure Island, that was like, oh my gosh, this is everything. Yo-ho-ho, and the bottle of rum, and the parrot on the shoulder, and the one-legged man, and the way they talk all the time. There's so much of our culture that we just take for granted. It's like, this is where it's from. It's right here.
Yeah.
So that got me excited.
I love the pirate voice. That was fantastic. That was my favorite part of the show.
Well, it's all is dictated by the text. The text will tell you what it should be like. The whole thing takes place in Norway. No one's speaking with a Norwegian accent. Hearing it in their own dialect. No one's, oh, you're Norwegian today? Oh, well, so am I. Everyone just hears it. So it's dictated from book to book Basically, if I'm doing a science fiction thing, just try and finesse what makes the most sense. I did a series of Poul Anderson science fiction works, and he would like have a whole civilization that are kind of like the narrative kind of thing. The important thing is the text. It tells you
Yeah.
the accents are. If you just start throwing voices because you can do a good whatever voice in there, it doesn't. That doesn't.
Yeah.
We'll
Sure.
be impressed, but we'll also be pulled out of the audiobook, and it's a bad match. You'll get bad reviews about that audio.
Do you have a voice actor you look up to in the industry?
Oh, I have lots of voice actors. Oh, yeah. Oakland is amazing. They call him Dr. Dialect. He's very good. He actually does coaching. Scott Brick, he's also great. Johnny Heller. There's so many amazing people who do great work. Because I listen to the classics, a lot of the recordings that I heard, a lot of those people have passed on.
Or older?
When I first started, I really loved Patrick Tull. He was my favorite. He did the Aubrey Maturin series, and that my line, because I was like, it's Shakespearean difficult language, and he's just doing it at this big, hamming it up the way that he does. But it was a lot of fun.
Have you ever written your own works?
I tried a while ago and I gave up because my wife's really, really, really talented. I'm like, I'm a writer. And then I read her stuff. I'm like, I'm not a writer. I can't. No, this is nowhere near what you're doing. That ship has sailed for me.
Do you have anyone helping out with your audiobook, or is it just a kind of one-man gig?
I'm kind of a one-man band. I mean, you need another set of ears on. So if I record something, if I'm doing an independent project, I will hire it out to have somebody else listen to it and make sure let me know the mistakes in that thing. So I do hire that out. If there's something that's very research heavy, I will hire a researcher, or if something has obscure pronunciations for languages that I just think I'll be able to find, I'll send it off and I'll hire that out too. But by and large, as far as the marketing, the studio, the coaching, the directing, all that stuff. I also do the editing and the mixing.
Okay. So very, very, very multi-talented. How did you learn the kind of editing and mixing side of it?
I hired a consultant from Sweetwater Studios to help me, to walk me through how to do Pro Tools and how to do mixing. He helped me set up a mixing chain and made sure that it sounded right and everything like that.
Okay. So you record and then you edit your own recordings?
The way that you do it, the way that it's called punch and roll recording. And so what you just record, you have it set up so that you just record till you make a mistake. And then
Sure.
you just figure out where to start again. You just look back and go, oh, shoot, you go back and you look and you put your cursor in the right place and you hit another key and you start recording again. And you just do that over and over again. So by the time you're done, it's pretty much already edited.
Do you have any advice for people who are looking to go into careers as full-time audiobook readers?
Yeah, actually look up Sean Pratt Presents on YouTube. He has a test in one of his videos, like, so you think you want to do an audiobook narration? Let me show you what it really takes. He walks you through, like, he basically has you sit down and read out loud to yourself for like an hour and see if you can stand it. Any word that you don't know, stop, look it up. You can't guess. So yeah, but if you can sit down by yourself in a closed space for 2 hours and just record out loud to yourself, that is what we do.
That is quite a talent. Is that how you got started with Sean Pratt?
Oh yeah, he's a great coach. He's a nonfiction. He's recorded over 1,000 audiobooks. He has a whole curriculum. It takes like a year to go through. I can't say enough about Sean. It's great.
Okay, I'll definitely check him out, Sean Pratt. I mean, not that I'm trying to go into an audiobook career, but definitely just really interested in the whole process. I wanted to
be your wannabe, which is like the difference between a starving artist and a successful creator, So,
okay.
And that works well for not just actors, but for any creative freelance. To be your wannabe by Sean Pratt. And
I love that.
Like my kids are all freelance creatives. Bless them.
But what
for them? But I mean, when it's kind of your calling, it is what it is. We are.
Sure. Yeah. What was that book called again? I'm gonna write it down.
To be or wannabe.
To be or wannabe. Okay. That's something I actually talk a lot about on the channel and kind of on the Instagram, is this idea of, how do you make it as a creative and not become a starving artist? Because I think there's a lot of people who are maybe drawn away from it because they want a more kind of traditional lifestyle. And then there are also a lot of people who are very, very talented, but maybe haven't found the right avenue. And, I'm someone who's like very entrepreneurial, and I've always thought about writing from a little bit more of a practical perspective. I would say, which is what I see a lot of writers are missing, especially in this world, is, they'll write, they'll try to get their stuff out there, but they maybe don't think a lot about like branding or marketing or anything like that. And that's actually something I maybe picked up from working in copyright for a little bit, like kind of, marketing and branding side of things. So I think it's very, very helpful to have both that creativity and the practical drive, you could say.
I mean, everybody wants to just do the fun stuff. Of
Yeah.
course, that's why we started this. But to be able to keep doing it, you need to do the unfun stuff. Just bite the bullet and learn how to be a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And I think branding is very important, getting the word out there, making those connections. And I think that's something that a lot of writers could definitely work on. There are so many people who have this great talent who really need to get their voice out there, who need to figure out how to do that in, our 21st century digital world.
Can I give one hint?
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question.
For 5 days a week, I try and make just 2 contacts a day, 2 reach outs to publishers, even if it's just making contact to a narrator that I don't know, but I'm impressed with, and say, I just listened to this. That was amazing. You're great. I'd love to work with you sometime. So just make 2 contacts a day. That's all. Send 2 emails to new publishers, to new clients, even to people that you have worked for that you want to work for again. Just 2 a day. And you should have plenty of work.
I love that. And I think that, that's very manageable. It's just
Practical.
2 small emails, but it also is very, very consistent. I think that's, probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give for just running your own business is if you break it down into digestible chunks and just do a little bit per day, I think that it will get you very, very far.
Exactly. So that's why, like I mentioned, I try and do 50 minutes of just curating my website, curating my demos, making sure all of my titles are correct and sending them off to being published and whatever. And then I also do 50 minutes of that marketing. I'm always striving, just trying a bit.
Yeah. You mentioned in one of your emails that you were largely self-taught. Did you teach yourself marketing as well?
Oh yeah, everything's self.
Everything is self-taught. That's the best way to do it, honest.
I just jump in and then see what needs to happen. And I could do this better. I could do this better. Yeah.
I had absolutely no kind of business background or anything like that when I first started everything that I was doing, but I just kind of did it. And I think, you could take as many kind of business or entrepreneurship classes as you like, but at the end of the day, the only way to actually know what you're doing is just to do it. Fully recommend it. I think it's obviously a big risk, but the rewards are also so high.
I mean, that's how I got started was I created my own projects. And because then I could go to publishers and say, I've done 300 audiobooks. Yeah, I hired a lot of them myself, but that's 300 audiobooks. I learned a lot. So.
Sure. Do you remember the very first audiobook you recorded?
Well, my first podcast episode was The Cask of Amontillado. And I tried to sound like Basil Rathbone because that's what I wanted to do. My first longer audiobook was Treasure Island. Audible Studios hired me to do a biography on Paul Dirac. It was like an atomic professor, and that was wild ride.
Do you do a lot of biographies?
Not a lot. I do some.
Fascinating. Do you have another favorite genre that you love doing, or is it mostly the classics?
I love the Twilight Zone, and I love science fiction and fantasy as well, where you can just have kind of those philosophical movements and messages that go through fun characters.
Great. Well, as we wrap up the show today, do you have any last words that you'd like to leave our listeners with, any message that you'd like to get out into the world?
Sure. If you're thinking about being a creative freelancer, let the world stop you. Don't get in your own way.
I love that. Couldn't have said it better. BJ, thank you so much for being on the show today. We'll be back next time for more Pens and Poison. I'm your host, Liza. Thank you guys all so much for listening.